My secret, just do something that ain't nobody ever done before, but make it sound like something that's always been there forever.
And we're back.
What?
Yes, we're continuing our Seattle run of shows. And now we have some folks who I'm very excited to talk to. Who do we have, Ryan?
We have our dear friends from Hood Famous Bakeshop.
Woohoo!
We have Gio and Shara. Well, actually, introduce yourselves to the podcast, to this Filipino American Life.
Hi, this is Gio, a.k.a. Prometheus Brown.
Hey, this is Shara, a.k.a. Shara.
I got it ready! Rapport!
Stop.
Well, thank you for being here. We've been totally excited to talk to you all. I repost all your shit because it looks delicious, and it's me going, I want to eat that, but I can't.
Yeah.
And then we did this week.
And yeah, you did.
How many times have you guys been there?
3 now?
How many hours have we been here? I'm just 2 days. Just 2 days. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So how did you all go from so the background is we met you, Mike and I met you through the APIA Spoken Word Summit of a million years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Word.
Because you all
Rehash that episode.
these brown hands. Yes, we know.
Long time.
And how do you transition from doing spoken word in a collective that is called Isang Mahal? Correct, Mike? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then going from that to being a hip hop artist with Blue Scholars, and then organizing, and then food. Because that's like a roller coaster.
You say that like it's mutually exclusive, though. I mean,
No,
are those
I know.
things mutually exclusive?
Yeah, no, all those things kind of blended together in some way, shape, or form. Like Mike said, they crossed over so much, like music and food, organizing and music, food and organizing. Like we're cooking. Like I'd always volunteer to cook for our retreats and like community events and things like that. Share with big stuff.
Eat vegan adobo.
What?
Yeah.
When he was like vegan vegetarian for a while.
Yo, the food game was just, without shading our Kasamas too much, like the food game at these meetings and educational discussions would just be horrible. And I'm like,
Can I guess?
Pizza, right?
yeah, I'd be like, is this a revolution that we're fighting for? Like a future where the food's fucked up? Like, no, let's model the future society by like eating well, cooking delicious food that's also good for you. And so that's where it started. Doing like potlucks or just making sure like everybody brings food and having a variety of stuff on the table and not like 8 people bringing a rotisserie chicken from Costco.
But that's
one or two is cool.
Once in a while.
Yeah, one or two is cool. No shaming, but like
or like 10 Costco pizzas.
I'm gonna need your help in my family potlucks. Everyone's bringing the chicken, and I was like, man, this is the same thing over and over again.
But if you break down that chicken, you can make really good chicken salad afterwards.
Chicken salad, kilawin,
Yeah.
sopas with the bones, all types of good stuff. Sometimes I'll even do that, not even eat it, and just like turn it into something else.
I know. Sometimes I'll wait and like see if anybody actually eats the chicken, and if not, I'm like, cool. I'm gonna take this whole chicken home and make something with it.
Do a remix.
Exactly. So we didn't. Yeah, that was our background. Both of us in those organizing spaces. I know for me, I had the privilege to travel as a musician, and everywhere I went, I was like, where the Filipino food at? Where the pho at? Where the tacos at? Like, and somehow found my way into like meeting folks in different places who are doing interesting things with food or like on the cusp of it in some weird way, like meeting through, like getting to meet Roy Choi through BAM when Kogi when it was still doing their thing. Eddie with Bauhaus in New York, like right when it opened. Saba was living in New York at that time, and his roommate Phil Chang like was like hella cool with him, and we were there like right when it opened.
Nice.
And so I think when I saw folks who were kind of on that, that's the first door that I saw. I was like, okay, if you into food, like you don't have to go through this, you know,
Traditional culinary school route. Yeah.
Like you could really, you know, there's an end, and exciting things are happening on the border of music and food, and culturally, like there's a moment happening there. So I think that's when Shara actually came up with the idea of doing the pop-up.
That's right.
Yes.
What was the name of the first pop-up?
It was actually not food and shit yet. It was, I think, well, we were making the menu, and Gio makes a mean gumbo. So the first pop-up was supposed to be just gumbo, and then we didn't know what else we were going to have. It was like a 5-course meal, and it said, or no, it was only 3. Yeah, right. Yep. And it was like only $25 too. And it was like pop-ups these days are
they're all like $50, $60, $70.
More, no more, right? Yeah. And so Gio had put gumbo and shit because he didn't know what other shit we would like actually serve, and so we just kind of kept it.
Gumbo and surprise guests.
Yeah.
Right?
That should be a pop-up.
And I think that it reflected that we weren't really trying to take ourselves too seriously. It was fun. Yeah. We were just having fun.
I think that was the last time we saw you, was when you were in LA doing the pop-up at Pod.
At Pod, yeah.
And that was the last time we might have but we couldn't really talk to you because you were busy working in the kitchen, and like we had come by just to get the cheesecake. Like, because I think you were the one who actually bought it for us.
Oh yeah, I went to that pop-up.
You went to that pop-up.
Yeah.
And like I was like, I can't eat it because I forgot what, but then you bought me an extra cheesecake and I kept that.
Oh, that was so fun.
It was. And now I think that was the last time a lot of people saw us, because shortly after, I think we just got sucked into the food industry and opened up our spot in Ballard.
Yeah.
Cheryl was working crazy days and nights there.
How long did it take for you to start doing the pop-ups and then transitioning to like a full kind of brick and mortar?
Let's see. Let's take inventory. September 2013 was the first pop-up, and it wasn't a series yet. It was just a one-time thing, and our family and friends were the folks in the kitchen. My mom and dad was in the kitchen with us, Cher's brothers. It was all folks from like Bayan and Gabriella were like the servers, and they're the ones that forced us into like, hey, you got to do this again. We're like, fuck no.
It was hard shit. It was so tiring. And after, I was like, I have so much respect for folks in the food industry.
Right.
There's so much that happens back of the house, and we were learning on the job.
Because you had like a regular 9 to 5 at the time,
I worked at
right?
a college, and I worked with first generation college students, and so it was like supposed to be a one-time thing. Prior to that, we threw a block party called Adobo Fest.
Nice.
Back in like August 2013.
Yeah.
And I think that just started it. We were also under Bayern USA. We were doing like a family exposure trip, and there were 3 families that were trying to take our kids to the Philippines to do not just like see the Philippines for the first time, but to help them understand a little bit to what extent you can like tell a 10-year-old, right? All like the beauty and also the challenges of the PI. And so we were fundraising. So we were doing Adobo Fest. We knew we wanted to do something with food.
Yeah.
So Adobo Fest, I think we threw that in like 3 weeks, and like 200 people came. Wow. We had like almost 20 entries of people.
Did you sell tickets to that, or they just showed up to buy like plates?
They showed up we sold individual raffle tickets, which gave them a taste. Oh. And everybody got a certain amount of tickets, and they got to choose which ones were their favorites. Oh. And then it was people's choice, and then the top 5 went to the judges table. Oh. And we had like the mayor at that time. Our son was a judge. It was like a group of, 5 or 6 folks. That was super fun.
Yeah. And then we could never do it again because we got a cease and desist from another entity called Adobo Fest. But anyway.
I forgot about
sorry,
that.
Never mind. I'm not going to say anything.
Well, yeah. And So it's cool. I mean, we had our hands full with this one time pop-up dinner that we were encouraged to do again. So we did a month later. And
nice, right?
Yeah, this was at Inai's. Rest in peace to Inai's. Not to Kuya Ernie, who's still around.
No.
kicking,
Shout out to Kuya Ernie.
But the
who
restaurant
let us do
itself,
it.
Yeah.
Kuya Ernie let us in there and just do our thing on Monday nights. So we went back and did it again. And I think it was after the second one that we decided, okay, and we didn't lose money and people were in good spirits. Let's do it again. And then we shut it down for a couple months because we went to the Philippines and then we came back and got our stuff together. Actually wanted to start doing it right, like actually looking at the numbers and how much of this can we sell, the price point. Recruited a few more people who had actual restaurant experience. Shout out to people like Jeriel, who grew up in Hawaii and was in the food industry. The homie Garrett, who ended up cracking Kanji, who was part of the pop-up scene as well, and opened up a brick and mortar, became part of our team. The homegirl Bo, who was OG, Hood Famous Bakeshop, in the kitchen with us. That team, it was crazy. Like, we never expected it would end up being like a 2.5, almost 3-year run of monthly pop-up dinners once a month. And I would say about a year into it, this one item that Shara made, people just kept coming back for. We were like trying to change the menu every month and keep it fresh, and that was its selling point. I was like, hey, if you want to eat this food, you better come to this dinner, because next month is going to be some whole new thing.
Yeah.
Except for one item that people were like, what happened to the purple cheesecake?
And that was like second month in. It was the second pop-up in October 2013.
I mean,
so.
literally, that's the only reason why I hadn't shown I mean, what?
It's addicting.
So that changed the whole trajectory of this pop-up dinner series. That was still going, but on the side was like people just like whispering in our ear, like, "Hey, where that cheesecake at? Where the cheesecake at?" And we're like, "Nah, this."
And that was before, like, ube is now the trendy thing.
Yeah.
So this was before then. Like, how do you, when you see other people doing a similar or similar style, because I swear I have seen the same style of, because the cheesecake is unique to me in that it's round and it has like yours was the first to look like that, you know what I'm saying? Because cheesecake before is like New York style cheesecake, it's a slice, right? But this is like it's like its own petite four of like, you know, cheesecake. And I'm like, oh, that's Shara's. But then I'm like, oh, when I like go through Instagram, I'm like, oh, this isn't the Bay, that's not Shara. Like, oh, like, wait a minute. And then I'm like, oh, that's not it either. But it looks exactly the same. So
it's all good. If you like scroll back on the hashtag far enough, you'll see who the first ones was.
And this
you know.
you know what, though? Like, though, I saw folks doing it in the Philippines too prior.
Yes.
So for us, like when we were conceptualizing menus, it was truly like it was fun. It was like we would just put the kids to bed and be like, what do we want to make, you know? And we would be like, what about this? What about that? And then we look it up and see, okay, who has anybody else done this?
Yeah.
So I remember I was like, what about an ube cheesecake? You know, like I grew up eating halayat. Ube is my favorite growing up. I grew up in the Philippines. And I just remember that memory of like eating halayat on a spoon. But then I was like, well, it's a plated like dinner, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a great idea.
What?
Next pop-up, if we ever do one, let's just give people a spoon of halayat. but seriously.
And a spoon of condensed milk.
Oh no, like a spoon of halayat on like a nice plate with like a little saucer of condensed milk in there.
Yeah.
But no, like
deconstructed.
no, I saw.
Don't steal that, people.
There was so there was like there was a blog, right, that had an ube cheesecake, and I think there was another guy I saw in like in New Jersey who had done it before, and I was like, okay. So tried some recipes out, but then it just kind of we kept tweaking, and then I remember Gio being like, "This is not good." In the very beginning, like he was very real, and so he just kept going. And I think for me, it was about stopped and I said, well, let me not try to put the ube in it first. Let me try to make the best cheesecake that I can make first, traditional cheesecake. And then we started playing around with the recipe and started adding ube. In the beginning, it didn't look like the swirl. We put halaya, jam on top, and strawberries. And then we went to wholesale. And the first batch, we basically put halaya and strawberries on every single one that went to grocery stores. Whoa. And then quickly realized when we sold out in 2 hours on the first day, like, this isn't sustainable. So that swirl came about because we were like, how do we keep the ube
like aesthetic,
jam,
like, interesting?
you know? Yeah, or how do we keep the ube jam on top? Got it. But integrate it and not have every single one be like, you know, coat the top of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so a lot of it was out of necessity and like learning how do we like do this? Like how do we wholesale? How do we make? It's one thing to make it in a small batch for like a dinner. And I just remember when we tried to scale for wholesale, I came home like, I vividly remember just being like, I hate this. Like, I'm not trained professional. And so every day, like, I would go to work, come home, bake at night, and I'd try to scale this recipe. And then it took, you know, almost a month, I would say, like, to try to figure it out. Like, how do you make this so that you can actually supply it to grocery store, like, in mass?
Is it still wholesale?
Yeah.
Give us an idea of, like, you know, making like maybe a dozen to like
5,000.
Well, so in the beginning, it was a, you know, regular KitchenAid that I was using, like, right? Even when we were taking orders, like slanging it out of our house like an auntie, like people, we were giving strangers our home address. That was not good. And then we got into like a commercial kitchen, like one of those shared commercial commissary kitchens, and then I went from like a 5-quart to 120-quart mixer. So that like things just don't. You can't just say times 20 to a recipe, and I think that's the biggest thing about, you know, it's to start off small, but it's different when you turn it into like a business.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you decided to open up Hood Famous Bakeshop in Ballard, right?
Yeah.
So what went into that decision?
Let's see. It was about everything that Cheryl was talking about, from being in that commissary kitchen, maybe about a year into it. I think we had outgrown that space, and Cheryl was coming home like little by little, we rent out more shelf space, more fridge space, which like adds to the monthly, you know, rental fees and everything. And it was just, it's just weird. Have you ever been in a commissary kitchen, especially at like the height of food truckness that we're like peak food truck, which like over the last 3-4 years we've been in. A lot of dope people we've met, but at the same time, like fighting over who gets to use a dishwasher and all things like that at the end of the day.
Remember when like we put in a huge batch of cheesecake and then realized there were ribs?
People were like smoking ribs in the same oven that we was like
so
trying to cook
cheesecake come out smelling like ribs?
Yeah, it was like
smoked cheesecake.
It was like smoked ube.
Did you sell it that way?
No,
I mean,
we had to scrap it. But things like that, little stories like that we can look back and laugh on, but was like super serious back then, where we were like, hey, if we're paying this much per month to be in a commissary kitchen for like not that much more, if we find a small enough space, we could actually have our own kitchen and not wonder who stole the sugar and not have to fight for who's doing the dishes or when can we do the dishes. So about a year into that, we started looking, and it took a while. We actually looked here in this neighborhood at spots in Chinatown ID, and you know, for whatever reason, whether it was too big or it needed too much work and we didn't have that much capital, the one spot, and it was Shara actually chanced upon this
There's
spot.
A basement under a bar in Ballard, out of all places.
Goodness.
Yeah.
But it was like less than 500 square feet. It was permitted as a commissary kitchen already, so you could wholesale
Nice.
in there. You could retail out of there.
Nice.
All the permitting was done, but it was in a basement under a bar.
And not many Filipinos in Ballard.
Not too many. And so I remember bringing Gio, and he was just like,
Yeah, I was like,
This
nah.
no.
I was like, what used to be here? Why does it smell like somebody smoked 5 blunts in here?
I'm like
right.
basement kitchen.
And it turned out that the previous tenants were they made weed edibles before they got banned out here. And that was why I was like, but before that I was like, I don't know about this. And Cheryl was like, this is. She sold me on the fact that it would be a step up from the situation.
And it was really meant to be just a commissary. Like, we wanted our own kitchen to be able to do what we were doing, wholesaling to grocery stores and some restaurants. And then it's a very walkable neighborhood. And then we said, well, what about, like, I found a little... like wardrobe cabinet on Craigslist that became our POS table.
Oh my God.
And then we took back a merchandiser like glass door refrigerator from one of the grocery stores that like they made us put our own in. I was like, why in the world did I do that? So we took it back, and then that's where we put all the cheesecakes. And literally you walk down the stairs, there's a refrigerator that you open, grab your cheesecake, and then there's a little like cabinet that has our square POS on it. And we just said, you know what, let's just see who comes. Like, at least we can make some money. Whoever walks in, we're going to be producing out of here anyway. And it really just turned into a lot more than we thought, retail wise, because people were coming.
And like with social media, did you notice like the uptick because people would be like, you have to go get this. You have to go get, like, I'm coming to Seattle. What's the Filipino thing?
And they go into a basement. Right. And then I swear to God, people are just like,
Yeah.
this is it.
Yo, shout out to the people who came from hella far, came to the spot, and then like left a shitty Yelp review because the spot like wasn't that big. I'm like, yo,
Well, you can't. There's nowhere to sit.
I know, but still, though, how you gonna penalize folks for like there's a situation that they have no control over? Anyway, I don't even read them shits. People tell me that people are saying that shit about the spot.
Yelp is terrible sometimes for that stuff.
It's overrated.
Yeah.
So around what year was that? The basement, like being in the basement.
We got in there in, was it 2000?
October 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we started kind of putting things in and getting it ready around that summer. And then we grand opened October 2016.
And then
So
the
pretty-
spot that's here, it opened like a few weeks
2
ago.
weeks
right?
Well, grand opened 2 weeks ago.
Grand opening was 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
How'd you find that space?
Oh man, there's a long story to it, but I'll condense it into just
Abbreviated version.
the abbreviated version is we actually walked. There's one of the spaces we walked through before we went and opened up Ballard. That we passed on in the Publix, the newly renovated historic Publix building on 5th. But the unit that we're in now was actually still it was a part of a bigger unit that they split in half. So at the time we're like, all these spots are too big. We can't do the rent. Jumping from the commissary kitchen to something that big just wasn't feasible. Yeah, it was too big of a leap for us business-wise. But some family friends and their family who's connected with the landlords, with the Moriguchi family, who also own Wajimaya. Just also a friend that I've known like from back in college days as well. We just kind of reconnected.
And she's like, hey, there's this spot still.
She was just like,
and
hey.
we're like, what? We
almost said no. We're like, oh no, it's cool.
Not knowing that it was like
well, we didn't know that it was split.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, there's a smaller spot.
And we're like, what smaller spot? We seen them all.
And so we
like,
went, we went in to go see it, and then we literally, we just, you know when you just feel something's right? I walked in there and it felt like it was right. But we sat on it for a couple weeks. And then after that, we're like, this is too good to pass up. As
Yeah.
far as like the location's great, it's in the neighborhood we want to be in.
Yeah.
It's
It's like right off the train station.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
That's
can't
true.
beat the location.
Yeah.
So, and it was the right size. We've always, I've always wanted to go slow. You know, we're all in,
Yeah.
right, on this. Like, there's nobody, you know, nobody putting up capital for, you know, like there's no investors or anything. Like this is something that we wanted full control over.
Yeah.
Right.
It's your family business.
It's our
Yeah.
family business, and so we knew that we wanted to grow slow and we wanted to stay small. As far as like, you know, physical space and how big it is. So it was perfect.
I have a question about the space. I love the design aesthetic of it. Who did that back wall with the weaving and the tiling?
plywood. Yeah, that's well, the material is called plywood, and the pattern was actually put together and designed by the overall architects of the project, Sergio and Sonia of La Union Studio. They've also done a couple other spaces in the city, including Bateau on Jackson. You go there?
We had dinner there.
Oh no, not Bateau in Capitol Hill.
Sorry.
Bateau.
Okay, never mind.
Which is it's a salon and floral shop.
Okay.
On Jackson, which is beautiful as well. You should check it out.
Okay.
It's, they do good work, and the pattern it's kind of a play on the concept of the cafe itself, which is day and night. Which you'll also see in a lot of indigenous,
Tattoos.
the whole.
Yeah.
It's our yin and yang.
Got it. And then the historic, like the archival images. Devin was saying that he helped with y'all to put those together.
Yeah. We early on we reached out to the FANS, Filipino American National Historic Society. Started kind of an email thread with Auntie Dorothy Cordova, and then reached out to Devin and said, hey, you know, we understand that we're going to be the only Filipino food establishment in the neighborhood when we open, but we're not the first. And so we want to pay homage to all the other Filipino businesses that have been in this district. And so they did an amazing job pulling up photos of different business owners, just like amazing images of Filipino Americans in the CID. And so, Gio got to blow them up and map them.
It's a nice touch because I
thank
love.
you.
Like I didn't even notice it once, and then I was like sitting, and I'm like, oh, I like this. Like I was curious, like, is this the storefront that used to be here? And then, but then you see like, I'm like, oh no, it's the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You get to really learn the history that way.
Yeah.
I mean, how does it feel to be kind of continuing that legacy in the international district? The
Man.
Filipino presence here.
It's honestly bittersweet. It's very. I mean, we're very, humbled and proud and fortunate. At the same time, like, I really hope we're not alone in this. We're not trying to be like, oh, we brought Filipino food back to the ID, and it's just us. Like, I would love to be able to take a lunch break and walk over to another Filipino spot. I would love for people like my parents, Filipinos who come to the neighborhood on the weekends or whenever, to walk around to like 3, 4, 5 different Filipino businesses and support them all and see themselves reflected in more than just one space. So on one hand, but it's dope. On the other hand, I really hope it's just the beginning of something else.
It feels like it is, though. I really am excited because, like, I see, like, on social media, like, all these pop-ups and then all these brick and mortars that are about to, like, come up here. So it feels like the Seattle Filipino food scene is, like,
And
it's going to pop off very fast.
I feel like it already, it's there. It's like it's growing, it's evolving, and shout out to Ilaw, which is a coalition that you've got kind of all like these different Filipino food and beverage professionals kind of came together just a year and a half ago.
Not even 2 years.
Yeah.
We're going to interview some of them.
Yeah. So, you know, just it's great to have like Archipelago down in Helmand City, and you know, Melissa's doing Musang, and hopefully, you know, in the next year or so, like up on Beacon Hill, and then shout out to like all like the OGs in the city too. You know, you've got Auntie Lila at Oriental Mart. I think I saw you guys went over there, right? Yes. Ludi's. There's a bunch still. You know, I think what's just challenging is in the neighborhoods like where there was or there is like a concentration of Filipinos, like Beacon Hill, there were 2 main ones.
Yeah, Inay's and Kusina Filipino.
Yeah, and like they're both gone now, right?
That's a bummer.
So when you think about Seattle proper, and you think about how many Filipinos are in the city, and then how many Filipino restaurants, and it's doesn't compare.
Yeah.
So what's your dream for Hood Famous Cafe?
Oh man,
Expand to multiple locations, or you want to keep it small though, right?
I do. I think, you know, one of the things that I think goes into this is, or I don't know, it's great, and it's also just really challenging because it is a mom and pop establishment, and we've got 2 young kids. We've got a 14-year-old and a 7-year-old. So
you're putting them in work?
Actually, the older one has been dishwashing on the weekends.
Good job.
Nice. Yeah,
earned that allowance.
He's trying to. Yeah, he's motivated because he cracked his phone a couple weeks ago, and we're like, yo, if you work this many weekends, this many hours, you might get. And I was like, you work one weekend, you earn enough money to get a new screen. He was like, nah, I want a new phone. I was like, cool. Work the next 4 weekends and he was like, bet. So now we got. Yeah.
There you go. Because you don't have to pay them because they're your children.
Yeah.
So this is
legally, I guess we don't have to pay them.
Yeah. Exactly.
No,
he'll earn
he's
it though.
He's earning a new phone,
sure.
I guess. But
That's good.
No, I mean, I think it's being able to be parents, you know, and still have a life outside of a business is really important to me, to us, and like this is our choice, not our kids, right? So we want them to still be able to do all those things that kids should be doing. Like,
so when they come back to you and they say, "Mom, Dad, I'm going to be an engineer," and make you proud, are you going to be like, "Oh no, we wanted you to be a hip hop artist"?
Watch, that's what our story is going to be, right? We're going to have the doctor and we're going to have the engineer. They're going to be like, "What happened?"
Yeah. And you're going to actually graduate in 4 years instead of 14? No.
Oh my God, I'm so proud. Where can people find you all? Online and whatnot, and where can they go to like purchase your delicious things?
Let's see. Hood. It's we weren't thinking about this stuff when we first. So it's all different. Like it's like Hood Famous BS on Twitter, Hood Famous Bakeshop on Instagram. I think something else on Facebook. I don't know. I at this point I just tell people to Google search ube cheesecake.
Are we still there? On
Google
the
search
page?
ube cheesecake Seattle.
Or just check the TFAL Instagram because
There
we
you go.
repost you all a lot because it always. I have to say your design stuff. Like I'm a fan of good graphic design, like or great graphic.
That's
Oh yeah! Shout out to my sister.
Janelle.
Shout out to Janelle Kibuyan. That's my youngest sister, and yeah,
She's our creative director.
Yes, yes.
And she started off with just doing our social and graphics, and
Started off as a server at Food and Shit.
that's
It's family. You don't have to pay them.
It's a family
It works.
affair for sure.
Sorry, I have one more question. I totally forgot to ask this. But you are wearing a Sonics hat.
Oh yes.
When do you think the Sonics are going to come back?
See, this is that time of
ended so
year,
sad.
man. It's I feel it every time, like right around the playoffs.
Yeah.
I dust off all my NBA or my Sonics in particular. Who knows, man? I think
Horrible.
I keep
They
hearing
did you wrong.
They did you wrong.
I
The NBA
appreciate
did
that.
you all wrong.
And I feel like only
That's why this sweater for Seattle is this to represent like
The Sonics.
the Sonic.
we appreciate that. We really do. And I hope it's soon. My older son, our older son of Johnny is so into basketball right now, and it's almost like a fairy tale when I tell
what
him
team
that
does he root for? If he's
he doesn't really root. He's just, and that's
He
the
just
thing.
likes
He
the
just
game.
loves the game, college, NBA.
You're saying he has
not being able to go to basketball games.
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's
dude,
there's a
how-
fairy tale that had the Sonics were here.
Yeah, when I tell him like you met Kevin Durant, like you were 3 years old and we brought you to a game and I was playing at halftime and you were like a toddler and he's like, what? No way. And
That's sad.
even just saying like, yeah, you've been to Sonic games before. He doesn't remember because he was like 3 when they left. And he's 14 now. So yeah, it's like a fairy tale to him.
Wow.
It's like telling him the Mariners used to be good. It's like just, it doesn't dawn. It's like, no.
They're not
no.
are
We have an amazing women's team, though.
Yeah.
I do have to
Yes,
say.
shout to the Storm.
Yes.
Super
Are they in
dope.
the Panayon, right? Or
Are they?
There was the highest ranking exec, I think.
Oh, okay, never mind. I read wrong.
What's her name? Something Bryant.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, she was I think the general manager or like VP, like highest
nice.
ranking Pinay in professional sports.
Love it.
For a
But
while.
shout out to the Sonics. I remember I went to a game during the last season they were here. They played the Lakers.
The what?
Did you wear your Lakers gear?
Yes, of course.
The what?
Shut up. Shut up.
This was Kobe
But-
era, huh?
Yeah,
Kobe era.
But yes, I loved the Sonics. I loved Sean Kemp, Gary Payton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a
They were
team.
good.
I don't know why they gave Jim McIlvain that big contract. But anyways, besides that,
Yeah.
thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yo, what's a good thing to do on the Thursday night?
Television.
It's college nights, but not anymore.
Not anymore,
For me.
no. It's actually a cool night to listen to me and Ryan talk on Kumu.
That's right.
What? You're on Kumu?
Yeah,
Yep.
sometimes. Actually, only twice.
Yeah.
But Kumu is a cool app that you should check out.
What happens on the app? What is Kumu?
It's a social live streaming app created for young Filipinos.
Hey, that's us. We're young. We're Filipinos.
Yeah, we're hip. We're hip. It's actually 82% millennial and Gen Z.
That's us.
That's us.
Is that us?
That's us 10 years before. 10 years before. But it's actually a really cool live streaming app created for Filipinos. They focus around community and live broadcasting technology. It allows users to connect in a raw and real environment. Live streamers are able to monetize in real time due to virtual gifts, which actually is real money to buy.
What?
Yeah.
So I can be on there and just be like, hey, give me money. I'll
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
Like
People
sing
can make
on-
money. And it's really great entertainment too. Like there's a lot of people who are on it, and you could just it's really
So
fun to.
If I'm
join.
on it just singing karaoke, people can give me money to.
There are people who do karaoke on that channel. Yes.
Joe and I don't do that. We usually talk about living life here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the only tech platform that prioritizes geolinguistic context beyond just English and Tagalog. So, for example, Bisaya, Ilocano, Ilonggo, Bicolano dialects are well represented on the Kumu app.
What about English?
Yeah. Obviously English, yes. Kumu has been downloaded in over 55 countries with over 8 million monthly app visits from 400,000 users. And it's a very safe, positive, and accepting place for Filipinos from three key segments of the population: overseas Filipinos, Filipinos in big provincial cities, and Filipinos in Metro Manila.
Cool.
Yeah, so if you have want to get in the know, you want to get into the coolest app available, download Kumu now. Hi everyone, we're back.
Yes,
Welcome
we
back.
are.
Woohoo.
We are again here in Seattle, and we are interviewing people from the Pacific Northwest, Filipino Americans. And today we are going to talk to Ariana de Leña from
Hello.
Kamayan
Hey.
Farm.
Hello.
Thanks for having
Welcome
me.
to the podcast.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yes, yes. So Ari is the owner of Kamayan Farm, and can you tell us a little bit about what Kamayan Farm is?
Yeah, so Kamayan Farm is a small mostly vegetable, but I also do flowers and herb farm just east of Seattle. And I sell to about 35 different families in the Seattle area. And I also supply several restaurants too.
Oh, wow. So how did you kind of get into Kamayan farm and farming in general?
It's a long, winding tale, but the place that I think really sparked my interest in food and in growing food was I used to live in LA, and
What? That's us. That's Los Angeles.
yeah, so maybe you guys know, do you remember the South Central Farm?
Yes.
Yeah, so when I first moved to LA, I was going to school there, and I was really missing the Pacific Northwest. And a professor of mine took me to the South Central Farm. And I remember meeting an elder there who was talking about how he had immigrated to the U.S. and had brought seeds with him and was now farming this land in the middle of South Central L.A., which for folks that don't know, that piece of land in particular was given to the community after some of the upheaval in 1992. And so it was this part of South Central LA where a lot of Black and brown folks and immigrants were sort of remaking this space for themselves in a way that was allowing them to have room for their culture and for their elders and for their young folks. And so I just remember talking to this elder who was growing seeds there to pass down to his grandson. And I think a lot of things just sort of clicked into place for me. So I'm mixed Filipino white, and I didn't grow up with a lot of my Filipino family. And so I think for me, just the idea that there's something so tangible that could start connecting you back to your culture, even if you're displaced or far removed from your homeland, it just like, it made me want to know everything about food and growing it.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. What were you studying when you were in LA?
I was studying environmental justice. So I was looking at a lot of different communities that were facing disproportionate impacts, mostly from like the ports in Los Angeles, but also just from lack of access to healthy food or culturally appropriate food. So that's sort of what propelled me on the path to farming.
But you grew up here in Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I'm from here. So I grew up on the east side of Seattle, which is like the suburbs. But both my parents are from Seattle, and my dad's family, which is my Filipino side, has been here for multiple generations.
So how did you learn about like agriculture and like kind of growing food? Like, did your parents teach you, or did you kind of learn it on your own?
I learned a bit of just like how to garden from my mom and my grandma. And then when I decided I was interested in food, I worked with a lot of different community gardens in LA and learned how to start growing through them. Eventually I moved to Chicago and worked for like this big urban agriculture organization that was growing food in the middle of the city on like multiple acres, which was really cool. And then I just decided to move back home eventually and started working for a farm and just kind of like got in deep real fast.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you find that land like that the farm is on?
Well, I first helped manage another farm in the area, and it was an older couple that really wanted to start farming, but also didn't know that much and just needed someone to kind of run the operations. So I started doing that for them and just got involved in the farming community around here, and eventually found another piece of land through another Filipino farmer, and he was leaving and was like, you should take over my plot. So I eventually took over his land and have been growing there for the past 4 years.
What kind of produce are you growing out on the Kamayan farm?
So I grow kind of everything, but in the past couple years, I've been trying to shift more towards breeding Filipino food specifically, and trying to get specific varieties acclimated to the environment in the Pacific Northwest because it's so different from the Philippines. So I grow everything from like lettuce and kale to chilies and eggplants and bitter melon and long beans. And I'm trying to just slowly increase the amount of those things that I can grow.
How do you do that, like in colder weather like this?
Well, so one of the things that I've been like kind of nerding out on lately is that when you grow like say last year I grew bitter melon and I planted like 100 bitter melon seeds. And out of that, maybe like 5 plants grew. And so then you take the seeds from those plants because obviously they can survive here. And then you keep just sort of
trial and
using
error.
those.
Yeah, using
Survival of the
those.
fittest of like, yeah. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
exactly.
Wow.
So that's been kind of
That's
a
really smart.
that's been
Oh my God, okay. Do it, people.
well, it's so cool. Like plants are so smart, and I think there's a lot of metaphors that you could draw about like that, and you know, like Filipinos living in the diaspora, and like how we kind of acclimate and how we learn to survive in different places. And
So you don't have to necessarily like keep it warm and humid or anything like that, right?
well, so I didn't last year, and this year I think I'm gonna put them inside like a greenhouse and make it a little bit more tropical for them.
So you don't have a farming background, right? So you kind of just like learned this, is
Yeah.
that right? What do you think like the misconceptions are about like farming your own food, or what kind of lessons do you think like people could learn from that? Especially Philams who, you know, there are some Philams out there who are we live in large cities. You know, what do you think you can share with folks who are either looking for it? My girlfriend wants to farm. We probably should edit that part, but in the future. So
I tried growing stuff and I'm not. Yeah, I don't have a green thumb.
yeah, that's why I'm like I don't either.
I have
but
a blue thumb.
I kill air plants.
I do too. Here's the thing, I do too.
Okay.
I cannot keep an indoor plant to save my life. Well, so I think that some of it is like when you're gardening, which most people are, you're working on such a small scale that like for me, I kill tons of stuff on the farm, but it's just so much area that like some of it survives.
Yeah.
But I think that like if you just keep trying, eventually you'll find something that will grow.
Yeah.
And you know, like do your research and figure out what are the things that I mean, you all live in LA, so you can grow like basically anything as long as you water it enough. But
Weeds. I grow a lot of weeds.
yeah, I grow a ton of weeds. Yeah, and part of my work too is like I do a lot of workshops and education on my farm, and like you're saying weeds, and part of that work is like allowing people to come out to the land and learn about what's there and what can be used from that land. So sometimes like we'll look at the things that are weeds like dandelions and figure out like dandelions are kind of similar medicinally to like bitter melon because it's bitter and it can help cleanse your liver like bitter melon does. So, you know, there's like a lot of different uses for things that are out there.
I'm shaking my head no, only because I still hate it.
You don't
I
like
know
bittermelon?
Joe loves it now.
No, because I married an Ilocana. And,
Yeah.
And then she taught me the beauty of bitter melon.
There's no such thing as the beauty
Dude.
of bitter melon.
There is. It's
I
actually
think-
really
Good for
good.
you. It's so weird because like, you know, living in like the city in Los Angeles, I have an orange tree. My dad has an orange tree in the backyard, and
No braggies.
What was that?
I said no braggies.
Humble brag. And so what's I guess it's part of like my growing up and like not really appreciating that there's a freaking fruit tree in my backyard, right? Like in the Philippines we had fruit trees everywhere. We had trees and you know, you could just pick.
You're spoiled.
Well, so that's the thing is like most recently I'm trying to tell my nephew, hey, I want to pick oranges and make my own fresh orange juice. And you know, just the idea of like having something like that available to you is you know, I think a lot of folks like take it for granted. I've taken it for granted and I feel badly about it. But you know, in just the whole idea of like growing your own food and growing and seeing how it kind of happens, I think is amazing. And you know, we haven't, you know, I'm not gonna say it's a return to that, but like I'm more appreciative of my orange tree, and you know, I have fresh squeezed orange
So
juice.
why are
Thanks.
there oranges at these recordings?
I will.
Yeah.
I will. Actually, I've offered. It's very juicy. You
did?
Yeah.
That's such a liar.
In the last, in our last
never
recording session,
offered.
I said I will bring you guys fresh squeezed orange juice. I just haven't done it, but
Right.
yeah. But no brag. But you know, it's just I'm thinking like the idea of like space. You know, that's the stuff that I'm you know, I want people to know like, hey, even with a small space, you can do your own
Yeah.
kind of like, you know, farming or grow your own stuff, grow your own herbs or something.
I have a
like that.
colleague who she's a part of the seed library in Los Angeles, and she recently got a plot at a community garden in Venice. Apparently she'd been on this wait list for like 10 years.
Oh, yeah. They're deep.
They're so.
I didn't know this. Like community
Popular,
gardens,
yeah.
it's like you have to either wait till someone dies or they move, and
It
then
depends
that
on
is how you get the plot.
Well, it depends on some of the agreements, but their lottery, there's just usually a long waiting list.
Yeah.
They're very coveted, and there's not a lot of space.
But it's very touching because where we are from, it's just like urban and dense. There's the land is not plentiful, but up here you have the capability to do these things, right?
Yeah. Do you have like? Are there a lot of politics in terms of community gardens here in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, there are. And I mean, they're divided up by neighborhoods. So whatever the politics of that specific neighborhood are, and like, especially in Seattle, as gentrification becomes a much bigger thing and community dynamics are shifting, I think like you see that play out on that scale, that micro scale.
Yeah.
So I think I'm not as much in that world anymore, but
Yeah.
I think it probably is an issue.
So I'm really excited that you grow, like you said, long beets. So that's like sitaw, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember my Lolo. So my Lolo was when he worked, he was an accountant for like in the Philippines. And then he came here and he was retired. And then he just gardened in their backyard. And he didn't have a farming background either. But he grew corn, he grew strawberries, he grew raisins, which means he grew grapes and then they dried out to be raisins. But it's just like interesting that like, I don't know what it is, but it felt like his therapy to be out there and to do something in the land. Because like he had no intention to come to this country. He really came here because like my mom and her siblings decided to do this. So like when you're there working the land, like do you feel that call? Or I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that I ended up doing this work because after I started doing it, I found out that my Lolo was a farmer, and that his parents were farmers. They were rice farmers in Pangasinan, and so I think I feel so many different connections to this kind of work. But I also think like, it's interesting that you both said like, you don't have an agricultural background, but like everyone has an agricultural background.
That's why I was like thinking about the return to like agriculture.
Yeah, like it's in all of our lineages, and it's usually just like 1 or 2 generations back for most of us. And so I just think like a lot of my work is about just kind of like reteaching people how to be in relationship to land. Like even if that's you live in a city and you spend like 10 minutes every day walking around and seeing what's alive around you. Because I think what's really like beautiful about that is in most of our neighborhoods, there's so much life and there's so much resilience in what grows around us. And there's like food, there's like very literally food in most of our neighborhoods, just like growing around the sidewalks. And like, you probably don't want to eat that food necessarily, but it's there. And so I think it's cool to just like, for me, it's cool to do my work and to be like cultivating and assisting in that natural process. But it's also cool to like walk through cities and see that that's going on no matter what. And that we actually are like taking that in on some level, whether or not we're conscious of it.
Right. Yeah. And I love that the word cultivate, right? Like I think part of the whole system and the process is, you're right, there's food that does exist, but it needs cultivation for it to be more edible or more accessible. And I think you kind of hit it right on the spot. Like there's a cultivation process to all of this. Anyway, it's just not about planting and like seeing it grow. It's about seeing the relationship you have with, hey, I can take these seeds, who's been resilient to all this weather changes, and make it stronger. I think that's amazing. So.
Yeah, I steal seeds from the city all the time.
If I were to visit the farm, is there like a tour? Will you guys give tours and all that stuff?
Yeah, for sure.
My gosh.
Ooh.
It's just me. I'll take you on a tour whenever you want.
So, what do you think is your most popular produce, especially like among Filipinos that you source?
Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, I think tomato and eggplant is really popular. I don't know. You know Aaron Versosa from Archipelago. Shout out.
He was supposed, he was going to be interviewed, but he went to Japan.
He's on vacation. Yeah, he's really fun to work with because he likes just like any weird thing I can throw at him. And their whole thing is like recreating Filipino flavors with what's available in the Pacific Northwest. So they're kind of fun to work with because it's a good blend between our work, because I can only grow some things really well, and then I'm like pushing really hard to grow other more like culturally appropriate foods. So it's fun to be able to play around with them and find kind of a middle ground.
Is it hard? Is like growing food hard? Because no, seriously, this is kind of a simple question.
It's a good question.
No, it is.
We had a box garden, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna grow all this stuff. Like I don't have to go to a store anymore to get garlic or onions or tomatoes, and like it's freaking hard.
It's about cultivation, Joe.
Freaking digging in the thing in the box garden. And
my dad would grow tomatoes, and he said that birds would pick at it all the time.
Yeah.
So he never would yield. He could probably get like one or two, but the vine, he would see them sprout, and then they would disappear.
Yeah.
Birds are wild. Yeah, when you were asking like what's the most common misconception, I think one that I get a lot is that farming is really easy. And I've done a lot of different jobs. You know, like I've done restaurant jobs, I've worked in nonprofits, and farming is easily the hardest job I've ever had because it's so, I mean, like you all were saying, it's hard. There's like plants are hard to grow, you know, they don't always want to grow. But I think that there's also just so many different components to it. And it's also a business. So like I have to be a business owner and a marketer and I have to know about the soil and what all the different plants like. And then there's weather that you can't control or predict in any way. So I think that, I think a lot of people have this vision of farming that it's like really serene, and I feel so much adrenaline all the time in my job. Like it's one of the more stressful jobs that I've ever done. So I think that it is hard. And, you know, like I think the people that do that work are really incredible, and especially the people that do that work their entire lives.
And it's interesting that you were found like through your serendipitous path, because I feel like a long time ago there used to be like a mentorship type of path to be a farmer. My high school, we had a 4-H club and I like
What's that?
A 4-H. What is 4-H?
It's like you raise animals.
It's like
stuff.
a farmer's 4-H animals thing. It was like all agricultural. It was a club for agriculture. And they would go like it disappeared after like my freshman year of high school. But like you would go to Pierce College, this local community college that has a farm, and you would learn how to do these things. And I feel like it was like a apprenticeship to do that job. And like that stuff doesn't exist anymore in like urban cities.
Well, in general, because of like large corporations taking over like agribusiness. And
probably.
Stuff, so,
and so it's like fascinating that like you're able to sustain your farm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I'm constantly thinking about is like, there's a reason people do this like across generations, because it takes a lifetime of learning to actually feel like you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, like I think the cool thing about it is there's always something new to learn, either because like your climate shifts or you start growing something new or you're experimenting. But yeah, there aren't a lot of kind of mentorship pathways anymore, because it used to be something that like families would do. And I think in some places like in the Midwest that's still true, but it's becoming harder and harder to do that.
Your story reminds me of a few years ago. There was a film at the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival, and it was about a family, a JA family, a Japanese American family of farmers who had an apple orchard, and it was one generation, like a father and their queer daughter, she was like, it was their
graduate of Berkeley, and then
you remember it?
Yeah.
Oh,
she's a graduate of Berkeley, and then she ended up just kind of taking over
she took over the farm.
Tanaka Farms.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking like, oh, that's a story, because there's not a lot of family farmers in generations because people like go work corporate or whatnot.
Yeah. And you can't really make money from farming. Like,
are you telling me it's not a get rich quick scheme?
it's not. It's not. I've been trying to figure out how to make it into a pyramid scheme, but I cannot figure it out yet. Yeah, I was working on my taxes this morning and I was like, this is depressing. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to convince, like, if I were to have kids, I think it'd be really hard for them to watch me do the work that I do and then be like, I want to do that. Yeah. That looks like fun.
Brainwashing.
So
yeah.
So because of what you said right now, so what drives you and what is like what is your motivation to do this work? Not that money should be the sole motivator or anything like that, but if it's hard, right? Why is it important, or why do you think it's important to do this work?
Oh God, there's so many reasons. I think that, for me personally, I love doing this work because it's like I get to work with the seasons. Mm-hmm. It's super creative. I have a lot of control over like my life and my schedule for the most part. The weather has more control over that actually. But I also get to like create a space that people feel called to. Like I think since I started my farm, a lot of people have just been like, this is so cool, and like want to come see it and want to be a part of it. And I think there just are less and less spaces where people get to feel connected to land, but also like the roots of their culture, you know? And I think it just feels important to like keep that space open, and also to allow people to, I think for so many Filipinos and people of color and like Black and Indigenous folks in this country, their relationship to land is so fraught because either they were forced off of it or they were forced to work the land. And so I think like creating a space where people can come and figure out how to have a relationship to land that feels like reciprocal and respectful and mutual is like a big part of healing that a lot of people need. And I don't think there are that many spaces like that.
Cool. If you had to kind of tell all the listeners about like agriculture in general, what would you tell them?
About agriculture in general?
About the work that you do. Like any lessons learned from what you've done.
Oh man, I always say the land is such a good teacher. I mean, I think that thing about failure, like you're always gonna fail, and it's more about like how many tries you do. Like
try again, Joe.
All failure is knowledge.
There you go.
All failure.
Oh,
yeah.
I like that.
Yes.
That's deep.
Should get that tattooed on my forehead.
I got that from Oprah. Thank you.
The great teacher Oprah.
The great teacher Oprah.
My Lord and Savior Oprah.
My sister and I were just talking about this morning how when we were like 7 and 10, we watched this episode of Oprah where she was talking about like financial planning and how to decide if things are like a need or a want. This is totally irrelevant. But we would walk like 2 miles to the Dairy Queen near our house to get ice cream, and we would get to the door and we'd be like, is this a need or a want? We'd be like,
like you're already there.
It's definitely a want. And like our little selves would just be like, okay, and walk back home.
Oh my God.
That's self-imposed guilt. Oh
For
my
you
God.
to be cognizant enough to know that and then walk away.
I know, right?
You have so much more maturity than I do.
Today, right?
I would have been like, oh no, it's a need. I'm here.
Yeah, I feel like I'm more like that now, for sure.
So where can folks find you?
So folks can find me on Instagram or on Facebook at Kamayan Farm. And my website is also kamayanfarm.com.
Nice.
Awesome.
And if you are a restaurant out there or want to, get more fresh vegetables delivered, is it delivered? Contact Kamayan Farms if you're in the Pacific Northwest.
Hit me up.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you
taking
for
the
having
time,
me.
To sit down and talk with us. But yeah. We want to tour the farm one of these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah,
Anytime.
I think we're gonna come back
I know.
based on the conversations we've been having today.
There's
we're definitely gonna.
so
come
many
back.
Filipinos here.
I
It's just
know.
like endless interviews you could do.
Totally.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you know how people can support us if they don't have any money but want to give us some shout outs?
How?
I wonder how.
Well, they can log on to iTunes and give us 5 stars. That's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-star reviews on iTunes.
Wow. It's like Yelp, but for podcasts.
It totally is like Yelp, but for podcasts. You could probably Yelp us too if you wanted. But on iTunes, if you give us 5 stars, we're more visible to people. We're more searchable. And we'll actually be one of the more top shows out there on if you search Filipino American on iTunes.
Oh, nice. I'm going to go and rate us 5 stars right now.
You haven't done it?
Oh, wait. I did it. I did it 2016.
Did you do one, Mike?
I don't have Apple devices or an iTunes account.
Or you could be like Tony Gertz, who wrote, "Love you guys. Thanks for all the great conversations and education around these experiences and stories. Heart emoji."
Is his brother Yo?
Yogurts.
High five. So take some time if you listen to us, if you like us. Go on iTunes, put a quick review, put 5 stars for This Filipino American Life. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we're back.
Yay.
We are still in Seattle.
We are.
How come we're still here? Oh my God. It doesn't want to leave. We don't want to leave.
We're like Filipino goodbye.
It's going to take
Like 10 goodbyes.
a whole
Like
day.
we're still actually here.
So yes, we are still in Seattle. And right now we're going to interview Melissa Miranda of Musang, Seattle.
everyone.
Yay, Melissa.
Hi,
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Are we your first podcast?
No.
Oh.
What was
okay.
What was the first?
Seattle foodies.
Ooh.
That's appropriate.
Keeping it local.
It's
Yeah.
I guess.
I guess. Sorry.
But you
guys.
are this is your first international
Yes.
podcast,
Yes,
right?
this
Because we're
is-
international.
Yeah.
We are?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
More like interstitial.
No, because we're
Vancouver.
You guys are going to Canada tomorrow.
No, we have listeners
North
in
Mexico.
Canada.
That's true.
We have listeners
Canada.
in England and Australia.
And yeah,
Wow.
Aztec Vegan moved to the Philippines, so
Ah.
she's international.
The Philippines, yeah.
She's in the Philippines.
So we're
now?
international.
Yeah, she moved for 6 months.
Stop bursting my bubble,
Yeah.
Ryan. But anyways,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So yeah, you are the owner of Musang Seattle.
I am the owner.
What is Musang Seattle?
Musang Seattle is, well, for the last 3 years, it's been a Filipino pop-up restaurant. We've been doing brunches, late night eats, kind of all over Seattle. But last week, we just got fully funded with our Kickstarter campaigns.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yay. So we're making moves to be a brick and mortar.
Nice.
Yes.
How's it feel?
Crazy.
All
But
fast? It was like
hella
happening
excited. Hella excited. I think it's just starting to settle in.
Yeah.
The realization that like our Kickstarter got funded and
You have
everyone
to
is
do
waiting.
all this real work now.
I know. So much more work.
Do you have an idea for like a location?
Yeah, we're shooting for Beacon Hill, which is in the South End. Historically, it's been a Filipino neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so we kind of want to bring Filipino food back.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, ask her where her restaurant's going to be.
Oh no, Joseph, why are you doing that?
No, because it's important to you, the story.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, so
So
Yeah.
ask
Tell us more about.
tell us more about the
Beacon
what does
story.
Hill.
Musang mean?
Oh my God, you're so nervous.
No, I make you nervous?
I get so nervous, period.
No,
That's
like,
Joe Guanmo, by the way.
Why are you
is it-
sweating?
Why is it Musang?
He
Seriously,
snuck
I
into the
forgot
podcast
already.
No, he
somehow.
did. This is commandeering. So Musang in Tagalog is wildcat. But when my dad, so my dad immigrated to Seattle and moved to Beacon Hill in the 70s. And his nickname was Musang. So that's the start. And then the connection and like honoring my father is he was the one that taught me how to cook Filipino food. So kind of this journey of coming back full circle. On Beacon Hill, there used to be 3 Filipino restaurants, and now there's none. And so this kind of stands for a lot for our community.
Yeah.
I think becoming a brick and mortar, like being in existence, is kind of what we're waiting for. So
That's so exciting.
yeah.
We love you, Melissa.
So how did you get into cooking?
So cooking, I was always cooking with my dad when I was a kid. My dad was always the one kind of preparing dinner for us. He was the one always cooking at family parties. My mom was always working too, but she's also a really great cook too. But I think significantly, my dad would always go fishing. And so that's how I started, because I'd always be like, how can I help? Like, I want to be in the kitchen. But he'd always make me do like the worst tasks, like cleaning squid or like trying to like discourage me.
How do you clean squid?
It's a long
With water.
process.
Just set you up. Wait, by cleaning, are you taking out the insides? Okay, see, this is the controversy that I had with my friends.
Yes.
So when my family, not just my parents, but my uncle also does it, when they make adobong pusit,
You don't take the inside.
they don't take the
Yeah.
insides out. They don't clean it. My best friend was like, "You're a fucking animal. Why aren't you cleaning it?" And I'm like, "Because who is this friend?"
Is she
Yeah.
Panay?
She was like, no, she's Filipino, and her mom cooks for us all the time. And she's like, "Dude, why do you have the plastic?" Well, we call it plastic, the bones.
Yeah, the bones.
And she's like, "You're supposed to clean that before you eat it." And I was just like, "What?" My entire life,
You thought that
I had to work for it. So for adobo pusit, you leave it in.
you leave it in.
Okay.
Do they call
Yeah.
it adobong calamari?
No, dude. No. It's still adobo pusit.
All right.
But I did get in a heated argument with her because I was like, "What are you talking
I
about?"
like it. Sometimes you just have to do a little
You
bit
gotta do a little
That's
work.
cool.
Yeah.
Take out
It's all
that.
part of it.
Take out the plastic.
Yeah.
Shout out to my cousins who we still like always have to fight about that.
So you had to clean the squid.
I had to clean the squid.
It's gross.
It's really a lot of work. But it was like perseverance, I guess. Like my dad always taught me like you have to work hard. There was no like cutting corners. And so even like in doing work that you'd think, it's super Filipino. Like you just have to do it. I mean, I thought he was like probably discouraging me from being in the kitchen, but I think at the end of the day, I was like, oh, like I remember being in New York and having a clean squid and being like, oh, I did this shit when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like you know what
Like
to
I
do.
already
Yeah.
knew
That's
what was up. So
So how did you get into like the pop-up?
oh yeah, pop up. So I lived in New York for a couple of years, and my first pop up ever was with Maharlika and Jeepney. With Nicole and Miguel, and they were doing a pop up series featuring Filipino American chefs in New York.
Nice.
So Harold Villarosa was the first one, and it was just themed per pop up. I spent almost 6 years living in Italy. So that's where I did my training. And so my pop-up concept was Filipino Italian, and like what are the similarities and flavors?
Oh my God.
Sorry, I just got really
please,
excited. I got this
please,
feeling in my stomach. I was
share.
like, ooh.
Yeah.
Please share what is that like?
I mean, if you think about the similarities of like flavor, there's so many. You know what I mean? Like cacciatore in Italian is like braised protein and like tomatoes, olives, potatoes.
Oh, like affrittata.
There you go.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends in the Philippines, she's half Italian, half Filipina, and so her and I would always like kind of be creative in what we could do. So it's like, let's cook adobo, but using red wine and grapes.
Oh.
Or you know what I mean? Like,
Sorry.
yeah.
We just did that together. I was like, oh my goodness.
So it was just this like concept of like things, and I was cooking in an Italian restaurant in New York at the time, and so it was just like, what can we do? How can we kind of create these flavors? So I don't know if you've heard of arancini, so like fried.
Oh my God, I
fried-
love those. Trader Joe's used to sell that, and like Mike and I would eat that for dinner.
Yes.
And it's the worst because it's just carbs on carbs on carbs.
Yep, and then fried.
Wait, what is it?
It's-
Arancini by itself.
Yeah, so it's like fried rice, so like risotto that you cook down, and then you bread it, and then you can either stuff it with cheese or filling.
The
or
Trader,
ragu.
it's discontinued now, but it was filled with fontina.
Yeah,
was
then
so
you
good.
fry it, and then you eat it. So we
Those are all good things that just came out of your mouth right now.
Right?
It's like fried. It's like risotto.
cheese, crispy.
Yeah.
So we did for that dinner. We did a dinuguan arancini with like a garlic aioli. So like stuff
The look
like
on your
that.
guys'
Like
faces.
that was just like this.
Documenting?
This concept of like pop up for me was just like, what the hell? This is so cool. So then when I moved to Seattle, I came back because my family's here. I was just like, what can I do that's different? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how can I still do things that I'm passionate about and creative, pop-ups. And so then that's how it kind of was born. And we started doing like Italian pop-ups. They became Italian Filipino. And then from there it was like, wait a second, there's not a whole lot of Filipino representation happening.
Yeah.
And so then it was like, let's just fucking do it.
All in, baby.
All in.
Yeah.
And it was awesome because people were just like, I don't know. The approach, you know, like my philosophy when it comes to Filipino food is heavily influenced with by my time in Italy. Freshness, seasonality. And it was just like, how can we kind of give people a foundation or like an open point or like an entry point into our food.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people only know like pancit, adobo or whatever.
Exactly.
It's like each pop-up is a different theme. Each pop-up is a different menu. And so it's like, people are like, holy shit, I never had this before. I didn't know that was Filipino. Or, I don't know, it's just like a continuous like education.
There are a lot of Filipinos in Italy.
Yes.
You encountered them. Were there any kind of like cool dishes that you can only find in Italy?
Like
Filipino
dishes?
Yeah. Like, was there kind of...
I mean, like,
mix?
they would add adaptations with, like, ingredients that they would have in Italy. So, like, I was blown away. One of our friends made us kare kare, but he put artichokes in it. So, it's like a substitute to banana hearts. And it was just like, what the hell?
Wow.
Yeah. But also, like, okay.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. Yeah. But, I mean, mostly the Filipinos would just cook their traditional,
whatever.
Like home.
Can you tell me more about this dinuguan arancini bite? I'm just like trying to wrap my head. Like, was the dinuguan inside?
In the rice cooked, and then the middle was like a piece of pork, and then we fried it and we coated it in breadcrumb, like panko.
What would you?
You
use?
brought samples, right?
I know. Are you here tomorrow?
But was it the risotto or?
Yeah.
'Cause I was like imagining like puto and then like something inside. And then,
So it's risotto dinuguan, so it's like blood flavored, like the sauce in the rice, and then we did a garlic aioli.
Oh.
But the whole menu was cool. Like we did a sweet potato gnocchi, but then we made it into kare kare. Oh. So it was like with peanut sauce.
Yeah.
We did, roasted it was vegetarian. So we did like oven roasted mushrooms, flash
oh my
layered bok
gosh.
choy.
Everything sounds so amazing.
So when you were in Italy, going back a little bit, was your dream like to do like a Filipino inspired kind of like, was that your path or did that come later?
I think it came later. Okay. I think it's like just been an evolution, let's say over the last 5 years. Oh, cool. It's like when I got to Italy, it was like, okay, cooking, immerse. Right. So I really, really was passionate about Italian food. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about being homesick or what is the familiar thing that like brings you back, it would always be Filipino food. Like my parents came and visited and we would have just like huge Filipino dinners for my friends. So that was, that's kind of always been like the reoccurring thread throughout like the culinary career, I guess. We'd always be like, well, I'm kind of homesick. Like, what am I going to eat?
The comfort food for you.
Comfort food for me. So then when I moved to Seattle, we started the pop-ups because there was kind of a way to like recreate or reconnect to Filipino food. But I'd say like even, if you ask Aaron Verzosa, so we've been friends, we all kind of connected over this like big pop-up we did together, like a night market, me, Aaron, Shira, Herbal. Aaron would be like, what's your end goal? Like, are you going to open a brick and mortar? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm just so passionate about the food and like gaining critical mass or like bringing this product that like people can relate to. So then like, I think by the end of last year, we pushed really hard. And we were doing a pop-up like almost.
We were reposting the Instagrams like a bunch because I was like, oh, this sounds like something exciting. Like, and I wanted to direct people to it to like support you. And so I was like, oh, too bad I can't eat any of it.
Yeah. It was like Spitfire, like by the end too. Cause like halfway through the year, I think it was like this moment of like, oh, we're doing something. Like this actually means something. This is way bigger than like I could have imagined. So at the end we were just like the frequency just like elevated, and then we ended the year and I was like, shit, I think we need to be something like a place that people can come to.
So that started Ilaw?
So Ilaw started 2 years ago.
Okay.
But that started because Amy Bessa and Tito Romy were on a food tour throughout
Those
the
are the
States.
folks who are the lead chefs of Purple Yam.
Purple Yam.
Yes,
in New York.
Purple Yam.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So she was doing a tour and she wanted to showcase Philippine heirloom ingredients. And she picked Seattle because of Carmel from Calzada. So it's just, there's so many layers here. And Carmel was just like, Tita, you don't understand how big the Filipino community is actually in Seattle. Because I think oftentimes we get bypassed because of like LA, San Francisco. And so she came here for the tour and we planned like a 3-day event that started off with a night market, and that brought together 22 different Filipino vendors in the Pacific Northwest. That 22 that we didn't really like. As we started planning it, we were like, holy shit, there's a lot of us here. We were able to spotlight everyone. And then from there, day 2, we had like a coffee talk with the Fons, and just kind of like, why don't we have a seat at the table? Why is it that like, in Seattle, especially, like there hasn't been success with Filipino restaurants. And then day 3, we did like a chef's dinner with a lot of the chefs here in Seattle. But that kind of formed Ilaw because it was a place and a space for us to like network and be like, hey, we're not alone doing this. I think that was the biggest struggle when we were doing pop-ups singularly. We were like, we can't do this shit alone. It's hella hard. You know what I mean? Like, are there people supporting us? Do we have community? And I think once Ilaw formed, it was like, oh wait, we have a family here. Like, if we need something, we can ask. Like, and I think ever since then, it's been, just is growing, and it's pretty clear. If you go to someone's event, you're bound to see.
The same folks.
Like 3 or 4 people.
That's cool.
So there's been, so much written and discussed about Filipino food lately, especially kind of just the growing popularity of it throughout the nation. What do you think is missing in the kind of the narrative that's out there?
I think, it's been interesting kind of on this journey. Like you get to connect with people my age. I get to connect with people that are my parents' age. There's a lot of titas, titos, and there's a lot of Phil-Ams that like the only way they can connect to Filipino culture is through food. I think that like the reason why there's a like kind of maybe in Seattle, like why is it happening now? Is we're finally addressing the questions of like crab mentality. Like why in food in Seattle especially, like why haven't we had success? It's because we never were really supportive of each other. And we're addressing things like, putting value to our food. I think those things need to be discussed too. Like I was at a pop-up last night and there was this young Filipino couple and they're just like, why are the portions so small? And I'm like, we got to start kind of helping each other evolve and give value and like have these discussions that might be a little bit harder so that like we can have a seat at the table. We do have a seat at the table, but like so we can elevate our food. I think, for me, I think personally that's a big thing that we need to start addressing within.
We wanted to change the notion of crab mentality to something completely different, which is eating crab at any time of the day.
Yeah.
Mentality.
Yeah.
Crab is delicious.
That is the new crab mentality.
That is the new crab mentality.
Eat crab during breakfast.
Yes.
So are you?
No, seriously, we were just talking about this. And the notion of crab mentality has been always like, pulling people down. But
Yeah.
let's change it.
Yeah.
Crab mentality is about eating crab.
It's about eating crab.
Have you ever heard of like crab silog or crab egg silog?
Exactly.
It
should happen.
Yeah.
Wait,
Just
that
saying.
doesn't exist?
It's gonna soon. I bet you.
Well, crab omelets.
I think
Yeah,
TFAL is going to get a
crab
pod.
omelets,
What do you call it? Pop up. TFAL pop up.
So like, would that be like the crab, like the all the cholesterol and the diet?
Yeah. Oh,
and then you
Lipitor on the
and then
side.
and then you put rice in that, and then you put a fried egg on top. Oh,
I wanna
and then
start-
you finely dice like some longanisa and like fan it on top of the egg yolk.
Joseph and I are gonna start a pop-up where we just give all these ideas and let
let the chefs and
There you go.
Come on, come on.
Okay.
The hotel. We're opening a hotel in 10 years.
Yeah.
What's a popular misconception about your business?
Oh man, I think that it's easier than it looks. You know, like Joseph and I were just talking about this outside, but this, like, the pop-up was built as a passion project, but it's been like a one-woman show in essence for a long time. And like I finally hired someone to do my social media,
nice.
which is huge. But like I was just telling Joseph, he's like, how's your day been? I was like, I've been running around. Like I have a huge catering event tomorrow. I'm just in Kirkland, I'm here and there, and like the behind the scenes are things people don't see. And I think that's where, like, when you have a successful pop-up, or, you know, the Kickstarter was so successful, but it's just like there's so much strategy involved, there's so much more involved, because it's not just about the food. You know, I just had dinner with one of our big supporters, and he was just like, what you do is you create experience, and like the food might be awesome, hell yes, you know, like I believe that, but the work it takes into creating and curating the event, that's the part I think that you know, people think that it might be easy. You're just like, oh, you just put a post up, and you're like, oh no, it's strategy. You know, like it's personal texts, it's personal messages, it's like all that stuff that you do to make it, you know, be a thing that's special. So I think that's.
And I think we've you know, we talk. I talk a lot about food, especially in the podcast. But we always want to highlight the business aspect of like starting a restaurant, being a part of a pop up, and then the food aspect of it, which is we want to appreciate it. We want to eat good food. So I think you're right. I think a lot of times we forget you know, all the sweat that goes into you know, that post, you know, or that tweet.
Yeah.
But I think, I think it's good to highlight, like it took a long time for this to be where it is. It's an evolution, like what you said. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's like it's the time you put in, right? Like 3 years of this, like, and it's amazing. And I think through Ilaw, like, we're able to share our experiences and our knowledge. So like one of my friends Domingo is the chef at East Trading Company. And we used to do like late night pop-ups. And when I got back, I was in Spain over the holidays. I was like, take this and run. I was like, I'll be your resource, but like, this is an opportunity for you to like learn that aspect of not just food, but what does it take to market? What does it take to do all this stuff? Because that's important too. You know what I mean? Like, we want to create new systems that we can help each other. It's like, growth.
What's your vision for Musang? Like, what kind of restaurant is it going to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's dialing in contemporary Filipino food. I think the concept is a place that like you feel like you're at home. You know, like you're sitting at my parents' table. The food it's going to be a changing menu based on seasons. A lot of, you know, we're partnering up with farmers here, and that are really excited to like just have fresh product that we can use, you know, and like it's using their fresh seeds. It's not like special requests. It's like, we have this. Cool. How can I make that, you know, into a dish that maybe we're familiar with? It's going to be a community space. Like we talk about the dialogue with Musang lately. It's like, it's a community driven restaurant. It's not a chef driven restaurant. I want that to kind of be the focus of it, because yes, like maybe we're behind the food, but it's really for the community. And you know, the amount of support within itself, like looking at the Kickstarter, like I think people are really invested.
And it's going to be so much different from a lot of the, you know, newer restaurants that are popping up in Beacon Hill.
Yeah.
Right, because it's a very gentrifying neighborhood.
Yes,
gentrified neighborhood.
It is.
How do you maintain it being a community restaurant while given kind of the economic forces that might contradict what you're trying to do?
I think, so I currently actually work in one of the restaurants on Beacon Hill.
Oh, okay.
Bar del Corso. They've been there for 7 years. So they're actually one of the first restaurants that kind of came in, and they've really maintained this idea of like neighborhood. You know, they know you by name. keeping prices like a neighborhood price. You know, it's like the more downtown you head, the more inflated it gets. And so I think the reason why they've been sustainable this long is because they've been really, really aware of the neighborhood and who's coming in. To answer your question about the community aspect, I really want to create a space and offer a space that's not just for food, but for folks to come in and do pop-ups themselves.
Nice.
You know, hold space for meetings for people in our community on days off. You know, I was really fortunate that the owners of Bar del Corso gave me space to cook food. She's Filipina. Yeah. And to be able to like coach and mentor like young Filipino chefs or people that just want an opportunity, like that's a huge idea of like, how do you pay it forward? You know what I mean? Like, is this an incubator for? And that also like lends to like the neighborhood being like, oh shit, there's something new happening here, like once a month on a Monday, or yeah, I think that's, you know, holding classes for youth.
Nice.
There's this Filipina, like PNW Filipino Collective.
PNW Pacific Northwest.
Yes.
For those who don't know.
For those who don't know. And it's just like me and two other women, and it's really like focusing on events that like are family friendly too. Because I think oftentimes pop-ups and events don't include kids or families. And so, you know, we've been talking about what it would look like to hold classes, you know, at Musang on days off, or, you know, partnering elders with young children, teaching recipes. But I mean, those are ideas in the future. Cool. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so awesome.
So what's the timeline?
Yeah.
Rough timeline.
The $1 million question.
So much pressure.
We keep joking and telling people different dates. They're like July, December.
It's like Parks and Recs, March 31st.
Yes. Tomorrow. You know, we're shooting for the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
Nice. So that might be before or after, but
February 30th.
Yes. But it'll happen. And we're really excited. Yeah, we're so excited.
We can't wait to come back and try it out.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Hopefully I won't be on any weird diet.
Stop being on Whole30, dude.
Are you on Whole30 right now?
Stop with your diet, dude.
I know. Stop dieting.
I have a cheat, so.
You're drinking beer right now.
Hey,
dude.
hey, what? This is beer?
Yeah.
Sorry, I snitched.
To the person out there, no, he's
My
not
bad.
drinking beer.
No, he's not drinking beer at all.
Does your mom listen to this podcast?
She doesn't know what a podcast is.
Oh, okay, good.
I have to tell her it's a radio show. It's a radio show. It's like,
You have a radio show?
On what channel?
radio.
Well, thank you so much
you
for
guys.
coming here.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
You can find us on musangseattle.com. You can follow us on IG, Musang Seattle, and on Facebook, Musang Seattle.
And congrats again.
Congratulations.
For getting Kickstarter funded.
Thank you. Thank you.
Exciting.
Thank you, Seattle.
Thank you, Seattle. You guys are amazing.
Do Melissa ASMR.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, guys.
This Filipino American Life is produced by Michael Nailat. Our intro and outro music is by Roger Habon, aka 10.4 Raj. Resident reality checker Girly Colado, legal advisor Rianne Fajardo, and graphic design by Vincent Collyer.